What up? Welcome to Homegrown Hustle, where local brilliance takes the center stage. I'm your host, Matt Eickman. Join us every week in celebrating innovation, guidance, and the power to inspire greatness. Let's explore the stories that shape our local business landscape, and together, let's ignite the spark of excellence.
Everything would be boring. I think sometimes there's always something more to learn or that's exciting for me with business. That's why I keep driving forward with Abracadabra, with the Homegrown Hustle and all that is what's next? What's the best way I can show up for my team, or because I have a certain standard of excellence for myself that I hold myself to, right?
Yeah.
Like that.
Yep.
That's why I love entrepreneurship. That's why creating a conversation for people to just listen to, like you mentioned, and allow them to take it upon themselves to grow and improve themselves if there's value there. That's opportunity creation. The only thing they got to do is the action part on their end.
Yeah.
So I think some of where I struggle, full transparency, is condensing some of the thoughts or ideas down into easier to digest and apply into a particular person's business, because oftentimes I'm thinking as I'm asking a question almost.
Sure.
And I've noticed a few times you've reframed it and brought in a specific framework or something that you've learned or talked about at the academic level that's allowed you to teach and allow people to learn easier, because teaching isn't really it's not solely on the teacher. A lot of it's on the learner too, but the material they're learning from, making that easier to digest is important. So those frameworks you guys have at St. Thomas, did you come up with those? Are these all textbook generated? Where does that come from?
Well, I would offer one academic comment, kind of maybe fitting exactly what you just described.
Perfect.
Which is, an ideology that is can be kind of a way of thinking about the world in which everything finally reduces back to a question that gets answered, right? Let's say America's the greatest country in the world. All questions reduce to that answer, which is yes, it is, of course, right? And that becomes a problem when something's ideologically driven, is that innovation is reduced, because you're no longer then looking forward, you're looking backward at the original answer and going, well, of course, America's the greatest place to have this business, or of course, America's the most innovative country in the world, or of course, America's blah, blah, blah. And you're no longer exploring reality. You're just reducing everything back to whatever your thought process is. And that in part speaks to historically why America has been so innovative and has led the world. As we have got 3% of the population of the planet, or 5% or like that. Why do we lead the world with all these innovations, et cetera? Because it is a very open country. We're not fundamentally driven in some ways. We don't have, as a culture, this view that, well, everything reduces back to, some, final answer that is, and all we're doing now is we're recording history. As a people, we're inventing the future of America. That's much more of an open-minded perspective and less of an ideological perspective.
Pie in the sky type of perfect.
Yeah, I mean, you could say some religions reduce back to this is the final answer due to whatever profit,
for sure,
and those kind of things. But innovation as a country in the U.S. has come about because we did have this open sense of the future is out there. It's this whole way of looking at the world, and those cultures that used to be ahead, China, India, 14th century, those kind of places, like their cultures started to get much more fundamentalist driven, and they felt like they were just recording history, not kind of innovating a future anymore. And they lost that edge. And that's why, in part, Western cultures have, started leapfrogging ahead technologically in the past 200 years.
Do you think like the sense of like impatience that we as Americans have to kind of sparks some of that innovation and the speed of that? Like if you're like when you're impatient and or ignorant to something, you can do a lot in a shorter period of time and move the ball up the court. So as you're talking about that, I'm just thinking like some other cultures are a lot easier going. They have 2-3 hour lunch breaks and they're like things move at a different pace.
Right.
Is there alignment between those? Do you think maybe culturally?
Well, I mean, there's definitely talk about that relative to Europe right now. It's like, the European culture is, insofar as all the good things that may be part of that, is a slower pace of life in some ways, is not as impatient as the U.S. And, maybe that's because we're, a country of immigrants who had to come here and are like,
just survive.
We have to, on the, downside, like we have to do something or we're not going to make it. Or B, it's just this incredible space of resources and opportunity. And now in the 2025, like there's money and there's like
cryptocurrency and all the things.
It's like, it's in part why, they like immigrants come to the United States and they're like, look at all this opportunity. These people have no idea. Right. And they're just living their lives. And it's like, I mean, I think maybe because I come from a small town in Wisconsin, I come to the Twin Cities and I'm like, what? Look at there's money, there's opportunity, there's all this stuff here. Like, let's go. Right.
So like a catch-22 almost. Like, because the hardworking nature of immigrants coming in allows for them to have a lot of success as entrepreneurs. Because a lot of the first and second generation people I know who have immigrated, they're in the entrepreneur space. They have a restaurant or a store or they're selling something. Right. And similar type of hard work ethic comes from the smaller towns as well, almost like islands of that hard work ethic within continental US, right? But these bigger, like Minneapolis, St. Paul, Twin Cities areas and Chicago, like those type of areas, now it flicks on that sense of exploration and wonder because up until you go there, you don't know what the experience is going to be like. So you're just going off of hearsay and what you see online. So the work ethic itself as a prerequisite to success, though, I think kind of hinges whether or not it's the impatience and the opportunity created here is created because of just the inherent opportunity. I think some of that can happen by accident there, but most of it comes from somebody with good work ethic and consistency, just coming and showing up consistently with like one clear focus in mind. So back to the topic of innovation, you're doing a lot in innovation. You teach a couple courses on innovation, right? What's the name of the course?
Entrepreneurship and Innovation.
So what does innovation mean to you? And then I'll ask another question once you answer that one.
Sure. Well, it's the difference between something that's invented and something that's innovative, right? Is you think of invention as something that you create something in order to overcome nature so you don't freeze to death and or you've got food to eat and things like that. That's more like strictly like in invention. And innovation is something that changes the nature of your not just relationship with nature itself, but in the culture, either at a local level or at a macro level. So an innovation fundamentally restructures things, whereas an invention kind of, we invented fire, right? So great. We invented fire, or at least the use of fire as a tool, and that allowed us to overcome, the ice age and things like that. And innovation is taking then that fire and, applying it to rocketry and, reinventing warfare or going to the moon, things like that. Changes the nature of the culture. So there isn't a lot of, there's a lot of smaller footsteps in innovation going on these days, but there is some fundamentals like, AI as a kind of fundamental resource of knowledge and using that knowledge as a tool, right? So you've taken all the words on the internet and you've collapsed it into a large language model that then creates associations between words, can kind of sort of think. That is an innovation that's restructuring our world. Quickly, yes.
Like almost too quickly.
It does have that feel, yes.
And then we were talking before, you had like a level of like fear, uncertainty about like what that means for people as it continues to accelerate. Do you want to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, I have a sense of history, and I, like in the 1700s, et cetera, I mean, small communities around the world kind of emptied out and went to cities, right? Because the Industrial Revolution was kicking off and jobs, and it restructured society, right? And if you think in a large context, like the wagon wheel of history just crushed a lot of what were institutions back in the 1700s, like guilds. Like we don't have guilds anymore.
Yeah. I don't even know what that is.
It would be the blacksmith guild.
Okay.
Or the...
Like a Teamster?
Yeah, it'd be kind of like a union, except
okay.
It was the guilds, right?
Okay.
And they kept certain innovations out, as it turned out, like the Weavers Guild, et cetera. Like there's always this push and pull between technology and the social side of the world, right? And so the guilds would go break, spinning jennies and other things in England in the 1700s because they would lose their role and their position and not just their jobs.
So they're slowing down the progress. Like they're kind of
they would push back against it because of that sense of things are changing too fast. Right. And they didn't know their position in it. And we have a lot of that, I think, currently is people, are looking at AI in the same way going, okay,
bless you.
Like AI is this technology. It's going to change the world. I don't want my world to be changed. And I don't want it to be changed that fast. I think that's a very reasonable perspective. Yeah. On the other hand, the wagon wheel of history is like, well,
it keeps coming back around.
How are you going to slow this down in a way that's going to matter?
What?
So it's
in slowing down versus like utilizing. I don't know. Like, can you really slow things down? Like the natural evolution and progress of things. Can people really control it that much?
Well, I mean, the Mennonites they decided, whatever it was, 15th century Germany is the right period in history in which to live.
They just stayed there.
And they just stay there, right? But and all the best. I mean, that's a choice. But I think there does need to be the sense of human agency in the process. Otherwise, you feel like you're just being driven.
Yeah.
By like an animal, by technology. And I'm not interested in that.
No. I like using like AI as a tool, right? And it's definitely helped in quite a few ways, but I think that can quickly become a crutch when people see how much it can accomplish, how quickly all that can happen, right? So that I don't know. I think people can get off in one ditch or the other, but a lot of people are just taking remember when like smartphones first came out and then there was those people who just, they weren't switching for forever until they stopped making all the other phones and had to. I think there's a good amount of people that are just kind of choosing to not think about it or use it, or they don't have to interact with AI in their day-to-day life. So they're going to turn into that guy with a flip phone when everyone else has an iPhone pretty quickly.
Yeah. Yeah. There's a model in entrepreneurship called crossing the chasm, right? And so you've got your early adopters. If you bring a product to market, the tinkerers, people who are interested, who will play with your product while it's still in a very beta stage. And then there's a chasm, right? Where a lot of companies fail, right? They have to cross this chasm. They have to find out who's actually going to buy the product once it's in its kind of alpha state, right? It's usable, it's purchasable, and that's like 17% of the population. And then there's the early majority, which is like 34%. And the same, you could apply this to AI, is that there's this adoption curve that, happens. And to your point, there's the late majority, another 34%. And then there are the laggards, 17%, who, will start using AI in 2040, right? And that's fine.
When they're forced to.
When they're forced to, right. Yeah. It's like, okay. Or, electric cars. Well, there are no gasoline cars anymore in 2040. So, you have to buy one now or whatever.
Yeah, because the playing field just changes, right? Nobody's driving a Model T around anymore.
Right.
But that type of slow progress and evolution happens over time. It's not. And it's the same thing with like learning or developing a new skill. Like you're putting in the work, you're showing up every day and you're working on something and the progress is happening, but you don't really notice it until all of a sudden one day you look back and you're like, I've made a lot of progress.
Right. Yeah.
And like vehicles, like the way we can see the innovation and progress of those is by looking back to like the old school ones and saying, look at all this progress. Well, 1918 to 1919, what the progress looked like that year. It's harder to see in like those shorter bits until you kind of zoom out and you have a bigger data set almost. But it's not this, oh my gosh, everything is a brand new perspective. And it's like this epiphany type of moment. It just slowly kind of builds.
Right. Yeah. Well, and I think that's a good way to put it. I mean, it's because life isn't like, 30-minute sitcoms, right? You don't get like an epiphany. That's, I mean, I don't know, occasionally, right? Yeah. You show up and it's like, I didn't expect that. And that's what epiphany is in my, view should be. They should be unexpected surprises like that kind of like, what, where did this come from? I did not see that coming. There's, you find yourself in a place where you're that person or you've got a perspective or that level of expertise, and it can be a little surprising that not everybody knows that, right? You know things and or you see things and it's like, oh, like this is dumb obvious to me, but
other people,
it didn't used to be, and I have to remember that it didn't used to be at all.
That's right.
I find that sometimes teaching, students, I'm like, oh, you have no idea what, ROI even means, return on investment. You have no clue what that word means. And of course you don't, like at this point.
I'm still kind of figuring it out myself, honestly, right?
Yeah,
with certain things, but like they can learn the definition of what ROI means, right? But then the application of that, when they take the knowledge that you and the other professors help them get over the years and they go and apply it. Now they know what ROI means at a totally different level.
Right. Yes.
Right. And that's a really interesting perspective because you can have the definition just down to a T, but still don't really know what it means, or you don't know it at the level that the future you might know.
Right.
That's interesting.
Yeah. That's what I try to bring to my class, which is sometimes a bit of a, challenge when I'm teaching entrepreneurship. For me, is that I don't just want to say, here's a definition of a word.
Yeah.
I want the students to actually feel what it is like to get to an ROI. And so
what it takes.
It's more experiential learning. Like we're starting businesses, we're doing like we're really starting businesses in the classroom as much as possible, because I want them to get a sense of not just the technical definition of a word, but what is the feel of that word like? And a lot of other words and or experiences, so it isn't just like, hey, I'm going to go take a test and prove that I know a bunch of definitions. I'm going to, forget as soon as the class ends. I want them to have a visceral feeling of here's what it's like to be in a highly uncertain environment, to not know what you're doing, to just go for it, to have success. Like, I want them to feel it.
Do you think that they receive that easily? Do you tell them that right from Jump Street? Like, hey, this is how we're going to learn this. And then as the questions come up, now you are providing the info when it is relevant to them. Because like the way I'm thinking about it, when I was in school over at Hamlin, and really anytime I went to school, like the goal was to get the right answers and get the grade, and the learning and the actual like internalization of that knowledge. It didn't really take advantage of that part of it. It was more for the tests. So when it comes to entrepreneurship, how do you in your position, I'm trying to think about it, like what's the test like? How do you do a test when somebody could be the best possible entrepreneur and they just suck at taking tests, right?
Right. Yep.
So, and that kind of dynamic between here's what entrepreneurship is, this is what we're teaching, this is the curriculum, and this is what it takes. Like those are kind of like opposite personalities in my opinion. Yeah. So
I don't give a lot of tests. I don't have a final exam. I have the final the presentation at the end.
Which was awesome, by the way.
Which is cool.
Your students crushed it.
And it's a feel, right? It's the feel in the room is what I'm trying to go for, right? Like, we succeeded in this. I'm like, that's what I want that experience to be.
And then the collaboration with their peers as well, I think is really powerful, because now
I think so.
What I saw happening is they're using each other to facilitate the learning for each other. And then you, as kind of a guide there, can help make sure it's being pointed in the right direction, not getting off track. Like, I think that's really powerful for the students.
Yeah. I mean, so they pick up on stuff that, business models that I think are helpful. And there's some terms and there's some frameworks that are more business oriented, like business model canvas. I use very simple structure. And insofar as teams, I get this in some of the student reflection papers at the end. And one student said, I really remember when you said that it's a lot easier for 10 people to make $10 million than it is for one person to make $1 million. And I'm like, oh, good. You heard that, because
yes,
because that I have found, in my mostly business career to be true, that is a truer thing. It's teams of people who are successful much more than a single brilliant entrepreneur. But that's what you see in the news a lot is, it's so-and-so personality entrepreneur. I'm like, that's not the way it works.
No, not at all.
In my experience. And so what I do bring back to the point about, how do you frame all that businessy stuff and the experience in the classroom is I do have a model, it's called TEMPA, TEMPA, technical knowledge, scientific knowledge, METIS, which is cunning intelligence, phronesis, which is practical wisdom and ethics, and arete, which is excellence, a bunch of Greek words. But I explain it in basic English, and there's parts of those types of knowledge that are, written and explicit things that are transferable, like like a new technology, things that, and there are other pieces like phronesis, metis, and arete, which are Greek words, but basically excellence, cunning intelligence, and ethics, which are more of a feel. And so I tell my students, I'm like, AI is not capable of that insofar as anybody knows. It's embodied intelligence. It's a feel for the room. We all know more than what we're saying at any given moment.
And like a moral compass too,
and a
little bit. Like where's the line for the individual?
And it's context specific. It isn't, you can't apply, every moral rule equally across every situation, right? If my family's starving and I steal a loaf of bread, am I going to hell? Well,
that's tough.
Right? But it is that it's context dependent. Like a lot of ethics is contextual, right? I know there are absolute rules and there's some of that also, but a lot of ethical situations, in my experience, you really have to look hard at the situation and go, okay, what do I know factually? And what facts are constantly changing? And what moral principles are in competition here, basically? And then what is for the greater good of this moment? If you're in a role as an arbitrator of some ethical situation, you as a father know you have to okay, do I be fair to the kid, or do I keep them safe, or do I tell them to put their boots on in the wintertime even though they want to go outside in their bare feet? Is it freedom or safety that I'm balancing here, right?
Yeah.
Freedom, go for it. Go. We'll see you in 2 minutes. You'll
and
be
real
back,
world consequences too.
Yeah.
Like that's how our kids learn stuff a lot of times, because kids don't really listen. They watch you a lot and they'll learn themselves. But like my oldest, he's 8. He's pretty hard headed. Like he's got to learn things the hard way sometimes, but he comes around and the whole idea of learning from other people's experience, and like the fact that the coaches he has know more and they've played more and they know more than me or his mom or anybody else that he knows. So you should listen to them and do the stuff they say, because YouTube is not smarter than them. He's starting to see that when he gets a piece of coaching and he makes a little tweak or adjustment and then it works. Like it's like he starts to see that little bit of connecting those dots. And I don't know where I was going with that, but the having to learn from the experience, it's the slow way to do it and it's the harder way to do it. So part of like the homegrown hustle, I'm trying to figure out ways that people don't have to do that, because I've grown a lot myself through asking questions to people who've been around the block more times than I have, and learning through their experience, so I can kind of leapfrog the progress for myself a little bit.
Right.
How do you think about that idea?
Well, I like it because let's just tie it to AI. There's a lot of, weirdly, we'll tie this to AI, is there's a lot of arguments for AI because it's more efficient, right? It's the big efficiency play. Everything's got to be more efficient, and then therefore, capitalism works better. Well, back to your son and people in general, even my classroom, is I don't think you can control people, right? And I'm not interested in controlling people, but you can disturb them, kind of like wild animals, and hope that they might take a certain direction. I think of a squirrel that gets in your house. You kind of open the window and hope that, the next thing you do, they go out the window. There's no guarantee, right?
Definitely not.
So that is a helpful model for me when I think about classrooms and working with entrepreneurs, is to, think in terms of you're just disturbing the situation and hoping that it goes in the direction that you think it's going to go. Yeah. You can't control it.
Correct.
And you can't control your kids. I mean, if you do, I think that's an over-rotation. In the same way that if AI makes everything more efficient, I don't know that that's a great
Can you be efficient with people though? Like, don't we need to be effective with people, not efficient?
Yeah, probably effective is a better word than trying to make every person efficient. It's kind of like the machine model of humans and human thinking. And I'm going to tie that back to my little, model of intelligence, is that, yeah, there are certain things in intelligence, technical information, scientific information can make things more efficient. And it's very mathematical and it's very kind of machine-like in its the rational approach to things. But even, neuroscience and behavioral science, all that are really, we react and we're interacting in the world in a lot of ways. Our behaviors are very emotion driven and very intuition driven and very cunning intelligence. We're very instinctive creatures. And I like to bring to my class, that's the feel. I want you to get a sense of the room, right? Have a sense of the room, have a sense of your teammates, have a sense of, okay, we're just going to try something. We're going to disturb this space with our product and or idea and see what happens and just take action in the world. And that's why I'm not going to give you a bunch of tests on, can you,
because it's going backwards. Right?
Yeah. Can you spit back out a bunch of definitions for me? I really don't care about that. I want you to get this visceral feel of entrepreneurship, because it is about taking action. It is about trusting your gut and the numbers and putting it all together and
a whole bunch of others.
All that stuff. Yeah.
So you're talking about disturbing the situation, disturbing people. The whole, I don't know what the quote is, but I think it is actually a guru, but I love to disturb people, because when you disturb them, you make them think, right? And that, like, being the disturber, the disruptor, the pot stirrer, whatever you want to call it, now there's ripple effects after that, right? And can you anticipate and maybe extrapolate from what you're bringing in based off the knowledge base? Yes, but the human element, like, people still behave whatever way they're going to behave. And that's that, like, the time period between when the stimuli or the disturbance is brought in and they process it and then respond, like, that's the time period where they think, right? And that thinking is good for the most part when there's actual time that can go into it. When it's like almost instantaneous, like sometimes it's like on point and it's that epiphany moment, and sometimes it's like just emotional, a very emotional response.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I told my own children that, it's not your first reaction to things that happen. It's your second reaction that matters, that becomes a story you tell yourself about your life.
That's good.
Because things happen, right? Terrible things happen to all of us and or whatever. And your first reaction is a reaction, and it's good, bad, whatever. But if you have that period, to your point, of reflection, and then I like to find, like, what is my habit when something terrible happens to me? I have a habit when something terrible happens to me, which is I go for a run, whatever it is. I'm like, okay, that period of time I've set up for myself. Now that's what we call wisdom. Like, how do you manage your own life given your experience of living
and how you navigate
that nobody else can give you that perspective. I've learned that perspective about myself, which is I like to run. Terrible things happen. I know how to manage myself in that moment, which is my first reaction could be very well stupid, terrible, ridiculous. I don't know. It'll be what it's going to be. But I do know my habit, which is what the Greeks would say is part of learning your excellence, which is I go for a run. I had to say goodbye to an old dog, Otis, this past weekend, which was terrible. We had him for 10 years. Great, beautiful, big, Great Pyrenees. But I know what I need to do then when there are those hard moments. And it's, go through that and it's rough. And then I'm going to go for a run or a walk or whatever. And in that walk, in that run, then, I can, whatever it is, in the case of Otis, maybe kind of write a little poem in my head or go feel what that means and then come back. And then that's the story I tell myself about my life.
Well, because it kind of creates that time or space for you to actually not react, but have a response. Because reaction almost, unless you've put the forth in where, like, I think what you just described sounds like metacognition to me, like thinking about how you think or how you interact with day to day. So that, I totally lost where I was going, but that whole space you create by when terrible stuff happens, like you go for a run, and now that gives you that time to really process rather than ignore it. Because a lot of people never create that time or space to go into those deeper levels of thought and reflection. And they just, something bad happens, they ignore it and they just push it deep down inside and never let it come back up.
Right.
And that's, I mean, that kind of takes away the learning opportunity for whatever that bad thing is. So I think that a process like that and understanding how each individual moves through life and how they behave when good things, bad things, whatever happen, and then playing that out, like that's a hard thing to unpack, and it takes a little bit of practice to be able to do it. So if you got a framework for that, I think that people would get a whole bunch of value from us discussing that here in 26. I know we're kind of getting to time here at this first little segment, but I learned so much in this 40 minutes we've been talking here that I am ecstatic to have you on a regular basis. Don't know where it's totally going to go, but I do know we're going to bring a ton of value for everybody that listens. I want to ask you a couple of questions about what opportunities you see within the homegrown hustle are, and why that kind of aligns with where you're at in life and helping to create the future.
Sure. I appreciate it. I mean, I love the opportunity here at Homegrown Hustle. And Matt, you and I have hit it off, which is great. Part of what I'm interested in is I do think the next few years are going to be challenging for people in general, for whatever reason. I mean, it's an uncertain period, and uncertainty is core to the definition of what entrepreneurship is navigating uncertainty. And so that was my doctoral research, is like, how do people navigate uncertainty? And, so if I have anything to offer, it's at least a willingness to like go at that from a standpoint of, well, how do you put food on the table during a period of increasing uncertainty, complexity, ambiguity, volatility, all the words. And, being able to have a venue like this in order to explore that, in some cases, like we're pretty theoretical today, and at other times, like boots on the ground, like,
let's talk
screw the theory. Like, how does this actually work? How did you make this work? And how is this possible for other folks, and what value can they take out of it? I mean, I think it's an awesome thing to be able to be a part of.
It brings me a lot of energy seeing people and hearing stories from conversations we've had on here and what they've gone and done with that information, how it's impacted them. Like, there's a lot of it that's happened. We haven't heard everything on our end, but I'm just excited about trying to create more learning opportunities, you helping bring a little more structure in the academia and theory of it into the let's just do shit type of learning that I have. So I think that type of dynamic it's going to create a lot of good conversations. We're still going to have quite a few guests on. I know we got a couple St. Thomas professors on the docket to come on, Mr. Mike Porter being one of them. He's a marketing guru. I don't know. I don't want to use guru since that's kind of been poo-pooed on here, this show, but but he's been around the block. He was talking over my head when I was speaking with him, that's for sure. But the higher level of thinking, the things that are the unknowns for me are like, for someone in your position, you can kind of look at a situation and give it a term or talk about it within the crossing the chasm concept. Like, you can point out these things that now kind of open the door for the learning opportunity, right? So we're going to be doing quite a few things, but we're going to kind of take it anywhere from somebody trying to start a business up, like what are the problems they got to solve? How do they actually start bringing money in, all the way to how do you go from $1 million to $2 million in 2026? Your window cleaner or something, like stuff like that. Yeah. And I just want to see where some of those conversations go. So we're going to wrap this up here. Excuse me. Happy New Year. Thanks for coming in, getting through the snow. And I really appreciate you coming on, Brad.
Yeah.
I'm super excited about this.
Thanks, Matt.
Hey, thanks for tuning into the Homegrown Hustle. It's been an honor to share the stories of local legends who make our community thrive. Don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review. Please stay tuned for more insight and inspiration. We got a lot of heat in the chamber. This is Matthew Eickman saying peace out until next time. Get hustling.